Hello and welcome to the July 19th, 1945 edition of Channel 6 News. We are here today with breaking news from the Cold War. Let's send it over to Natalie for updates from the Potsdam Conference taking place in Germany.
U.S. President Harry Truman, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill met in Potsdam, Germany on July 17, 1945 to negotiate terms for the end of World War II. While President Truman didn't want to take reparations from Germany during the Yalta Conference, it was recently agreed that the Soviets, British, Americans, and French would take reparations mainly from their own occupation zones within Germany. The Potsdam Conference is also bringing to light the fact that Joseph Stalin is not keeping his promise to allow free elections in Poland. During the Yalta Conference, the USSR agreed to give elections to the countries they took control of during the war. This isn't happening as Stalin is asserting this communist authority over Poland. The Soviets have prevented free elections in Poland and banned democratic parties, which could cause problems for the U.S. later down the line.
In other news, George F. Kennan, an American diplomat in Moscow, proposed a policy of containment. Let's send it off to Aaron to learn more.
The containment policy is a response to a series of moves by the Soviet Union to increase communist influence in Eastern Europe, China, Korea, Africa, Vietnam, and Latin America. George F. Kennan wants to prevent any extension of communist rule to other countries. He is convinced that if the Soviet Union fails to expand, its social system will eventually break down. The United States has been called to action to block the spread of the Soviet influence. This policy will begin to guide the Truman administration's foreign policy. The containment policy will adopt two approaches, one being military and the other being economic. U.S. Secretary of State George C. Marshall has proposed a program to funnel American economic aid to Europe. Faced with the rapid growth in the size of communist parties, especially in France and Italy, the U.S. is proposing a program of direct economic aid.
Breaking news has just come in regarding the Truman Doctrine. Grace has more information about the policy which provides economic and military aid to free nations threatened by internal and external opponents. While Britain is trying to financially support Turkey and Greece against communist rule, their economy has been badly hurt by the war. Britain has recently asked the United States to take over the responsibility of stopping the spread of communism. Yesterday, on March 12, 1947, Truman asked Congress for $400 million in economic and military aid for Greece and Turkey. In this statement, known as the Truman Doctrine, the President states, "It must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are residing attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. If this plan is successful, it will greatly reduce the dangers of communist takeover in Turkey and Greece."
Finally, we have some news about the Marshall Plan, which is offering economic aid to European nations to help them rebuild after World War II. Let's hear from Natalie to learn more.
Even though the war is over, Western Europe is still in a state of chaos. With factories closed, millions of people are living in refugee camps, with the European government trying to figure out where to resettle them. Recently, Secretary of State George Marshall proposed that the United States provide aid to all European nations that needed it, saying that this move was directed not against any country or doctrine, but against hunger, poverty, desperation, and chaos. The goal of this plan is to rebuild Western Europe and for the Communist Party to lose its appeal.
Thank you for listening to today's edition of Channel 6 News. Stay tuned for updates on the Cold War and breaking stories about the events occurring in Europe.